Prime Big Deal Days is coming October 8th and 9th. Woohoo! Which can lead to involuntary deal squeals, like the infamous deal on a new massager squeal. Yeah! Save big on Prime Big Deal Days, October 8th and 9th.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, distribute it everywhere, and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit your podcasts right from your phone or your computer. So no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, and when you want to take conversations with your fans to the next level, Q&As and polls are the best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I feel so supported in the creation and distribution of my show. Spotify for Podcasters hosts masterclasses, office hours, and more to help creators develop and fine-tune their skills. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
But when I drank, I would become angry and irritable and all that stuff. And I went into treatment one day and I kept trying to look like I had it all together. I didn't want anybody to see that I was suffering. And so I went in and I was crying and what's going on? I'm like, I'm fine. Like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm irritable, I'm frustrated, I don't understand what's going on. This is really, but what that led me to do was be vulnerable for the first time. Instead of putting that mask on and pretending like everything was okay, I had the ability to say, I'm terrified and I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I'm here and I just need help and I don't know what to do. Can someone help me? And so putting out my hand to ask others for help was just so huge and important for me in starting to heal and feel better.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to or back to the show. Thank you so much for clicking on this episode. My name is Lily. I'm your host. And today I have a very, very special guest for you. This is probably one of the coolest episodes. I feel like anytime I have a guest, I'm like, this is the coolest episode. But in all seriousness, Hilary Phelps is one of the coolest people I've ever met. I had the opportunity back in the fall to work with her. We were on a panel together, and I'm also working with her in a way, like kind of on a project that will be, I'll tell you guys more in the future. But I've gotten to know her pretty well through various projects that we've worked on, and I've always wanted to have her on the podcast. Hilary is a perfect example of finding power in vulnerability. At 29, Hilary checked herself into rehab for a substance use disorder. It wasn't about putting down the drink, but rather changing people, places, and things in her life that caused her to use it in the first place. Hilary kept her sobriety quiet until she recently celebrated 15 years of sobriety, well, actually 16 this past year. But when she celebrated her 15th year, she actually made her story about sobriety public. It was picked up by a couple local then national news outlets. And since then, Hilary has been using her story as a catalyst for change in so many people's lives. Hilary is a speaker, an addiction recovery advocate, and holistic wellness coach. Her mission and purpose is to help other women find their voice and heal from anything that is holding them back from finding their purpose. Her story is incredible and really just proves how important it is to share your story because you never know who it might touch. Hilary Phelps, welcome to 80/20. I guess a quick little catch up. How have you been? What have you been up to lately?
Good. I'm, oh my gosh, quick catch up. I know, I'm like, when did I see you?
I want to say it was like
year?
almost. I think it was the fall.
Oh my gosh. So since the fall, I've really, I think, stepped up with the speaking and done a lot more in the recovery space, the addiction advocacy, which has been really exciting, a lot more speaking and just trying to spread the message of hope that, anybody who is in the throes of addiction or in mental health can heal. So that's been really powerful and feels very purposeful, which, is also funny or ironic because at 45, when I was 20, I thought I'd have my life together. At 45, I, had this like, oh yeah, I'd be this and that. And now at 45, I'm completely changing the landscape of what I do for a profession, but it feels more purpose driven. And I really, really love that.
Was it January that the Today Show like ran the article about your sobriety journey and all that stuff? Is that when you really felt like your speaking kind of kicked it up a notch kind of thing?
Yes. And it's only been a year. I started speaking out about my recovery at 15 years sober because I kept it kind of quiet because I still felt like I still had shame around it, I think, and I had to work through that. And what I realized was like if I still felt shame, I wanted to put myself in the shoes of someone that had 1 month or 1 year, a woman that was still kind of really quiet about it. And if she felt that way. So if I was feeling that way, I wanted to be able to lend my voice to people and say, like, this isn't shameful. It's okay. Together we can recover, and also lend voice. I know, Jessica, our friend Jessica Buchanan,
Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she has, the really beautiful, it's like a recover in the, out loud. So those recovering in silence can continue to heal. I think once the Today Show, yes, like once the Today, like .com picked it up, and then People Magazine did a piece, and then Daily Mail picked it up as well. And that felt like it kind of, solidified that my voice in the space of addiction recovery.
Jess does a really good job of she's even helped me. It's really opened my eyes because telling your story, I think, it's like you live your story. And then the minute that you can start telling your story, you learn more about yourself and your story. And then you're actually helping others. So it's like all this, shit that you went through wasn't for nothing. It's like, I don't know. It's being able to have that vulnerability, I think, has helped heal me to some degree.
I 100% agree with that. I think, and for me, and I so recently led some women through a mindfulness journey, and same thing, at the end of it, we all opened up and kind of shared, and everyone was like, I came in here with this, all this stress. But when everybody walked in the door, they're like, hi, it's so good to be here, but we wear these masks. Or I wear this mask sometimes to feel, to look like I have it all together. Cause it's like, well, if I look like I have it together on the outside, then, people are going to think I'm doing great. But you're right. Like the vulnerability is where we connect, and that's where the community happens and the healing happens. And I think there's such a powerful voice in that vulnerability and authenticity.
Take me back a little bit to your upbringing, your childhood. What were you like as a kid?
So as a little girl, I was, which is funny because I feel like it's kind of come full circle now, but I was super curious. I loved information. I loved learning. I loved nature. My parents bought land. We had, 5 acres in the woods. And so my brother, my sister, and I grew up in nature, and they built their dream home on this property. And we got to play in the stream, and my sister and I caught crayfish, and we rode our bikes. And it was a really beautiful childhood of just exploration. I got straight A's. I was a rule follower, and I was a really good swimmer. So I started swimming when I was 7. So I got straight A's through 7th grade. And I still remember I got a B in history. And I went to the teacher and I was like, can we please change this? Like, I will do anything. Like, I was like, please. And then, I started swimming when I was 7, and I went to my mom and I was like, I want the big trophy, because I got the 3rd place trophy at the championship meet, and all I wanted was to be the best. And so my mom said, well, most of the kids that get those trophies are year-round swimmers, because we were summer swimmers at the time. I was like, fine, sign me up. Like, I'll do anything. Like, I just want to be the best. And so that mindset has always been kind of how I lived my life. I just wanted to be the best. When I started drinking, that kind of went out the window. But my childhood was, it was great. It was great. We spent a lot of time in the pool. We spent a lot of time in the ocean.
So do you think swimming played a big role in kind of the trajectory of your life?
100%. I do. Because I grew up, like, my mom's a teacher. My dad was a police officer. So we weren't, we were pretty middle class. Swimming afforded me the ability. So I got a full scholarship to the University of Richmond, which was incredibly helpful for my education. But as far as swimming goes, it was great, like time management. It was great for structure. It was really good in goal setting, like all those things that later carried me out into like the work world and in today. It really set me up for that. But I also just like the space of the water. So I'm a Pisces sun, Cancer moon, Scorpio rising. So I'm all water signs. And so water is like so comforting to me. So it also feels like a really safe space, like being in the water and being in the ocean. And so being a swimmer was also really great for my mental health because it just felt good. So, but I think as far as setting me up for success in life, like, yes, 100%.
I totally agree with you. So I'm an Aries. You actually got me into like human design and stuff. But and like, do you remember sitting there like at
Yeah. My
oh man,
app,
what was it? Yes, yeah.
the
I
diplomat,
love that.
the dip. Yeah.
I'm a yeah, the diplomat. I'm a manifesting generator.
Ooh, you're
Yeah,
powerful.
thank you.
So you can think and create. So you have both. So I'm a generator. So I do. So like someone
Yeah.
else has to suggest, but you can suggest and do for yourself.
Le está gustando mi podcast? Thanks to Babbel, I know what that means. Do you? This summer, I have been putting a priority on checking off a bucket list item, which is to learn a new language. So I've been learning Spanish with Babbel, and you can too. Because of Babbel, you can start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Why Babbel? Because it works. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a private tutor or fooling yourself with language apps that are kind of just more like games, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. All of Babbel's tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable, accessible, and rooted in real-life situations, delivered with conversation-based teaching. Like I said, being able to communicate in more than just English has been a top priority for me for a very long time. So I've dedicated about 15 to 20 minutes every single day this summer to logging on to Babbel and going through a lesson. And Babbel's personalized learning content, real-time feedback, tracking, and visualizations help to keep me focused and motivated. And 15 hours with Babbel is actually equivalent to 1 university semester, which I think is so crazy. With over 10 million subscriptions sold, Babbel is real language learning for real conversations. Here's a special limited time deal for 80/20 listeners to get you started right now. Get 55% off of your Babbel subscription for our listeners only at babbel.com/8020. Again, get 55% off at babbel.com/8020, spelled BABBEL.com/8020. Rules and restrictions may apply. This episode is brought to you by Mosh Bar, the protein bar for your brain. I am such a foodie, and if you guys know me, I love going for a little midday afternoon snack, but it's got to be good for me. It's got to be like good for my brain, help me to kind of roll into my afternoon, keep getting work done, keep doing my thing, and Mosh Bars have quickly become my favorite go-to afternoon snack. With 6 delicious flavors, each Mosh Bar includes 12 grams of protein and is made with ingredients that actually support your brain, like ashwagandha, lion's mane, collagen, and omega-3s. Your brain is your number one tool, which is why Mosh Bars were mindfully formulated by some of the top neuroscientists and functional nutritionists to create a smart snack that keeps your brain and body fit, fueled, and feeling good. So like I said, I love to go for a Mosh Bar for an afternoon snack, but they're also the perfect bar to just toss in my bag for after the gym, or sometimes I'll toss one in my glove compartment of my car in case I get hungry. My favorite flavor would have to be the dark chocolate crunch. It's rich, it's velvety, it's a little almond buttery. Mosh also has a couple other flavors, including cookie dough crunch, blueberry almond crunch, peanut butter crunch, and others too. You guys have to check all of them out. Don't settle for a mediocre snack when you can nourish your body and mind with the fuel that it needs to be successful. So whether you're at the gym, on the go, or just living your best life, Mosh protein bars will keep your brain and body fit, fueled, and feeling good. Head to moshlife.com/8020 to save 20% off plus free shipping on your first 6-count trial pack. That's 20% off plus free shipping on your first 6-count trial pack, which includes all 6 mouthwatering flavors. moshlife.com/8020. Because I'm a fire sign and I feel like everything is so fiery, the water is a good means of kind of calming me down. I was also a swimmer growing up, and so I feel the same way. It's such it definitely shaped who I am as a person. And I also grew up with siblings that swam. That kind of like rivalry definitely also shaped who I am as a person. I would love to hear more about your experience like swimming with your siblings.
Yes. Are you the oldest?
I'm the middle.
You're the middle. Okay, so my
Yeah.
sister's the middle. So I'm the oldest, and then my sister's 2 years younger, and then I have a brother that's 7.5 years younger. And so my sister was 2 years younger. I was the best. So I was the fastest swimmer in the country at age 11. I had a national age
Wow.
group record. I found those the other day, like the certificates that say,
No way.
yeah. And so that was a huge part of my life. And then my sister started to beat me. My sister was third in the world at 14. She was a butterflyer. She went to trials in 96. Her best time would have won the Olympics in 96. But
Wow.
I mean, as a swimmer, it's the human currency. You have a bad meet and it happens to be a big one.
Mhm.
There's,
Yeah.
it feels really hard. And so my sister started to beat me when I was 12, 13, 14, probably 13 and 14. So she started to come up really quickly. And that felt really hard because she was my younger sister. And then she just flew past me. She surpassed me. She was in the national B team, national A team. I mean, she'd swim in Paris when she was 14. She'd traveled the world, and it was really hard. And because I didn't know my place anymore, it's kind of like I didn't know my place in the family because I was the best and I was the oldest, and then my sister kind of passed me, and I was like, well, now what? um and so that felt really hard. And that's not why or because or any, but I started kind of experimenting with drugs and alcohol around that time, and it was like, well, I'm not. And it was also around the same time, like someone said, because I was getting straight A's and I was the fastest swimmer in the country, and so someone's like, well, if you swam harder and trained faster and studied more, you'd be better. And maybe for some people that would have been motivating, but for me, what I heard in my mind was like, what you're doing isn't good enough, and you're not good enough the way you are. And so that kind of changed um, how I started to view the world and how I started to view things. And I was like, well, if I can't do this well, like what can I do well? And so I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and I had the gene of addiction in my family and in my body. And from that point, I found what I was good at. Bouncing. So my brother swimming was, it didn't feel as hard because my sister was, was two women competing. And, as a swimmer, it's like the age group. Once you get to open, you're
Yeah.
15-year-olds swimming against 18-year-olds. And so it just felt embarrassing, and my brother was a boy. And so that wasn't as big of a deal because we weren't directly competing with one another. Yeah. But she also really, like, she trained really hard and gave up everything to be the best. When she started beating me, I was like, okay, I'm good. And then my mom also said, she's like, you kind of had this thing where if people beat you, you're like, I'm going to let you win this time because you haven't won in a while. So why don't you go? She's like, I would just watch you do this and be like, what are you doing?
That's like kind of
I was
nice of you though. I'll let you win this one. Go
I'll
ahead.
let you. She was like, I was like,
Uh,
what? Like, well, I don't know.
that's kind of how I was too. So I mean, the clock doesn't lie. And so, when you get to the point where, yeah, you age up and your siblings age up, and then all of a sudden it's like, your younger siblings aren't swimming 25s anymore. They're in your age group and they're faster than you. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And I think, your perspective of struggling to be the best is a really kind of a universal one, especially in, people who are high achievers.
And also struggling to be the best coupled with not being good enough.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
So I had those like two things going on. Like I wanted to be the best, but then I also didn't feel like I was good enough. And so it was that pendulum swing of, best versus I'm actually not good at anything. And that's a really hard place to exist too, especially as like a teenage girl. And for
Yeah.
anybody, but as a teenage girl, it was really hard.
Oh, especially as a teenager. I mean, you're so susceptible to, all this criticism and finding your place, and girls are just mean to each other. And that's really, really hard.
Yes. I mean, there's a difference in our age, and I remember when I was in high school and middle school, it was really hard. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of teasing. There's a lot of just mean spirit. And now I feel like it's even more challenging with social media and just, portrayal of perfection that we can show
Mhm.
online.
Yeah, I can't even imagine trying to be a middle schooler or a high schooler nowadays. And just actually was reading somewhere, a country in Europe banned social media for anyone under 15. And you
That's
had to
nuts.
submit your ID to prove that you're 15 or older. And I'm just thinking, even 15 seems so young. Like I think about who I was as a 15-year-old, and probably up until recently was I finally okay with who I am. Like being on social media is just such a, yeah. right?
I remember at 44, I was like, I now feel grounded in who I am, like physically, emotionally, like, yeah. So, but even my son now, like I've pulled my son off of, I'd created a whole personal page for just friends and family that I keep private, proposed him, but I pulled him off of my more public profile because for the most part, because he would do things. He's like, "Are you going to post that on Instagram?" I'm like, "You're
Wow.
6. No,
Yeah.
I don't want you performing or thinking that likes are important or how you look or so I had to make a real shift in what I was doing even around him because he's not at the age where he has a phone or social media, but I don't want that to carry on, when he is in his teenage years thinking that how you look is the most important thing or how many likes you're getting online is the most important thing or what people are saying about you.
So thinking back to yourself as a teenager, and maybe we can move into your college years now too, did this kind of feeling of striving to be the best kind of just continue to follow you?
No, I mean, once I started drinking, it kind of shut everything down, which is, when I say I've come full circle, like I've come back to that inner child, like the little Hilary that I was back, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. But it didn't. I kind of stopped caring. Like once I started pouring alcohol and drugs in my body, it kind of shut down that desire to be the best. And I just didn't, I just became apathetic and leaned more towards, we talked about like the desire to be the best, but also feeling like I was never good enough at anything. And I started leaning more into that. I'm not good at anything and I'm not good the way I am. I'm not okay. But I put on this huge, the mask, right? It goes back to the mask of ego. So I was kind of mean. And I just, to protect that really scared and sensitive person of feeling not good enough at anything. And so the outward manifestation of that was negative and nasty and witchy and just unkind, which is the antithesis of who I am at my core. But I just didn't know what else to do. And so, not feeling good enough, but wanting to look like I had it all together kind of took on that persona of anger.
Take us back to, 20 something you prior to walking into that recovery center. What would like a day in your life look like?
I mean, so after college, so I drank through college and, which is I think pretty typical and kind of scary because it was, there's no one around anymore. I wasn't living under my parents' roof. But it was even more challenging once I graduated from college because in college I still had to check in. I still had to swim and I still had grades and I still had teachers. So I still had some accountability. But once I graduated and got out into the workforce, it was, all bets are off and I could kind of explore that however I wanted. And so, but I worked. I mean, I lived in it's called Laurel, Maryland. I think because you're in Maryland. So
Mhm.
like we lived in Laurel and I'd take the train. There's a commuter train because I worked in DC, but I was 22, so I was really young, and I didn't have the money to live at the time, in an apartment in DC. So I'd take the train back and forth from Laurel and I'd get up in the morning and I'd take the train and I'd have my cup of coffee and I would drink the coffee on the way to the train and get to work. I'd work a day and then I would get little traveler things of wine and pour them in my coffee cup for the drive home or the train ride home because everyone else was drinking on the commuter train. They give you these like little Dixie cups that you can drink out of wine from. And I didn't want to drink like a lady. I wanted to drink to get drunk. And so I put it in a coffee cup and I would drink that all the way home. And so they had 2 little bottles. And then I would get home and I would drink 2 full bottles of wine that night, either by myself or with, a boyfriend, or I'd go out with friends. And that was kind of my life. If I felt okay in the morning, I would get up and work out. But a lot of my times really started focusing on addiction and drinking and, the next drink. And most of the time I was, hungover at work, which made it really hard to function. But I just kept going, I had it together on the outside, but on the inside, I was just dying, burning alive. It was emotionally hard.
Was there kind of a pivotal moment for you where you knew that something had to change?
So it always had. So in college, my college roommates, my senior year, kind of staged an intervention, and they were like, "We don't like the way, this isn't you. Like this
Mhm.
isn't the way you act. Totally different when you're drinking. You're a really mean person. You're not doing the things. Like I just wasn't being a good person. Meaning, I was cheating on my boyfriend, or I was fighting with women. I would. It was just it was not who I was when I wasn't drinking. And then once I started pouring alcohol in my body, it's like you never knew who was going to show up. And so after college, that continued. And I was a blackout drinker, which meant every time I put alcohol in my body, I would forget what happened the night before. So I'd wake up the next morning and be like, oh, well, okay. And it was like flip phone era. So I don't even know if you're, if you were around. So it was like really early in the like cell phone days, and Facebook was just getting started. And so there wasn't social media, and there wasn't, texting wasn't huge. And so I would wake up with scars, or not scars, with like bruises on my body or scrapes. And I was like, haha, that was kind of funny. And I would laugh it off and pretend like it was okay. But where it got really scary is I'd find myself in really dysfunctional relationships because I had such low self-esteem, lacked self-love, lacked self-acceptance. And so I found myself in relationships with men who were the same, and so it was a really toxic relationship, but I thought that if I had somebody, then I was okay. And so this one really tough relationship, he had a father who had been in recovery, who had just checked himself into rehab. And he's like, you have a problem. And if you don't get help, I'm telling your family, because I could kind of hide it from people, meaning people just thought I drank too much, or my family would be like, we don't like it when you drink. And so I would just hide it. But I had the ability to go home and shut the door and just drink by myself, or get really drunk with a couple of people where my family didn't see it. And that felt really shameful because I'd never wanted my family to look, I don't know, to worry about me or think poorly of me. And so, a lot of people talk about these really low bottoms, meaning, I have a friend whose dad found him with a needle in his arm, another friend that was living in a bullet-ridden car, like all of these really sensational stories. And I say just, but mine was, I'd say, a high bottom. I didn't get arrested. I never lost a job. I never wrecked a car. My family didn't disown me, but I just felt like I was a shell of myself. And if anybody's been in that situation where you just feel so emotionally drained and empty, it's like I had nothing left. And so when he said that, that was the catalyst that I needed to start looking into treatment. And I'd gone to, 12-step meetings before, and I'd checked them out, and I didn't find what I was looking for. I didn't find the right meeting. Nothing really clicked with me, and I needed accountability. And so I checked into it. It's called an outpatient rehab center, where I would work during the day, and then from 5:30 to 8:30 every night, I would go to the treatment center, and we would have basically group therapy and check in, and we would have a course, which is funny because it's called feelings management, where we're taught to manage our feelings, because things like getting a parking ticket would lead me to drink 2 bottles of wine, which to some people is like, most people like, it's not a big deal, pay the ticket, like don't do it next time. But those little tiny things would send me into a tailspin. And so I had to learn to appropriately live life and life's terms, and that hugely helpful, but also really challenging.
So what were those like initial days, weeks, months of recovery like for you? Kind of walk us through what's going on.
When I pour alcohol in my body, it was to numb. And so anything that was going on, it's either if I was happy, I would drink to celebrate. If I was angry, I'd drink to numb. But no matter what was happening, it was anesthetizing my feelings, So when I started drinking, I would stuff those feelings down. So if you visually think of like pouring a liquid on top of these feelings that are like building up in the center of your body, and you just keep pushing them down and pushing them down and pushing them down. And then all of a sudden you take off that numbing agent, they have to come out somehow. So those first 30 days first were great because I'm sleeping, alcohol inhibits your ability to get really deep sleep and all those things. So I started to feel really good. My skin started to look better. Like all the physical stuff started coming. But then all the anger came out. And I was really, and it kind of scared me because I was like, where's this anger coming from? I'm not an angry person. But when I drank, I would become, angry and irritable and all that stuff. And so I went into treatment one day, and I was like, and I kept trying to look like I had it all together. I didn't want anybody to see that I was suffering. And so I went in and I was crying, and it's what's going on? I'm like, I'm fine. Like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm irritable. I'm frustrated. I don't understand what's going on. This is really, But what that led me to do was be vulnerable for the first time. Instead of putting that mask on and pretending like everything was okay, I had the ability to say, I'm terrified and I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I'm here and I just need help and I don't know what to do. Can someone help me? And so putting out my hand to ask others for help was so huge and important for me in starting to heal and feel better. But those first 30 days, it's such a roller coaster. We talk about that pendulum, like think about a pendulum swing, like super high highs, and then you'd swing really quickly to super low lows. And it was just, and you never knew when it was coming. And thankfully, now it's like after 16 years and a lot of habits and rituals and daily practices and all of the things that I've done to, find my voice and spirituality, now it's more in the center. So the highs aren't super high, the lows aren't super low. And like, that's okay. Like being in that middle space is something I didn't like before because I thought it was boring or like it just being okay or fine or whatever. But now I like that middle space of like, I don't need super high highs because I don't want the super low lows. And so it's okay to find that just middle ground. Yeah, but those first 30 days were really tough. First, I say anybody with in the first 90 days, like are the strongest people I know in recovery because it's hard. And then when I came up on my first year, I was terrified because all of a sudden I was like, I've done this for a year. Now what? Wait a second. Is this my life now? Wait, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like this, okay, like, because you have this goal and you met the goal and then now what? So those, I'd say the first 30, 60, and 90 days are just, it's a roller coaster.
You guys already know it is Healing Girl Summer, and I would have to say that one of the most influential and healing parts of my wellness journey was by far my time at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I enrolled in 2020. I was taking a little bit of time off college, and it was really just a time in my life where I had so many questions about my body. I originally enrolled because I wanted to know more about nutrition and what food could do for my body, but I graduated with so much more. The program is the broadest and most comprehensive curriculum out there, covering 7 different categories: physical health, nutrition, mental and emotional health, primary food, spirituality, coaching, and business. And to me, my time at IIN was way more than just a certification. I used the tools I learned in the health coaching training program in my daily life, like how to go into everything with a beginner's mindset, active listening skills, and how to put primary foods first. If you know, you know. It's almost like I could embrace coaching as a lifestyle, not just as a job. Graduating from IIN was one of the driving forces behind this podcast. I originally started to talk about food, to talk about health coaching, and it has transformed into so much more. With teachers like Gabby Bernstein, Will Cole, and Melissa Wood, you will learn from the best of the best. If you've ever been interested in learning more about your mind and body on a whole new level, this program is for you. The next class begins on September 18th, so sign up today. Click the link in the show notes to check out a sample class or mention my name, Lily Rayco, during enrollment for a generous tuition discount. Again, click the link in the show notes to check out a sample class or mention my name, Lily Rayco, during enrollment for a generous tuition discount. I can't wait to watch you grow in your potential and unlock a life you love with IIN's health coaching training program.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
When you talk about the middle, that's so interesting that you brought that up. I just have to share. I talked about, and it'll go live tomorrow, but this week's episode, I spent a hefty chunk of it talking about being in the middle space. And this is a completely different scenario, my story and this, that, and the other thing. But it's so weird because I'm always like looking for like the next high high or the next low low. But once you finally kind of come to terms with like, it's okay to just kind of like, yeah, you could like, you gotta ride life's waves, but it's okay to just like chill in like the still water for a little bit. You don't always have to be going for like the next big emotion. I feel like that's such an interesting concept. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's like excitement can still exist without being over the top. And it's changed the way that I live my life, like whether it's now like in relationships, like dating relationships or like things that I do on the weekend. Like all of a sudden, like I'm okay saying like I have no plans this weekend, and that makes me really happy. And that's okay because before
Yeah.
I wanted to be fun and I wanted to be something I wasn't instead of just embracing who I am. And who I am is great with what people would define as boring. I'm fine going for a walk, like sleeping in, going for a walk, having coffee and reading on a Saturday. That's the best day. Like I don't have to have going out to a club and going out to a hot restaurant. But before I thought that would define me as like a cool person, where now I'm like okay with being, yeah, in that middle space of just peace. Like peace is more important to
Yeah.
me now than the excitement,
Right.
because with the excitement also can come the really, for me, can come those depressive moments. And so I've found it, yes, so beautiful to exist in that middle space.
So you said once you came up on your first year, you were scared. And then
Yes.
you stayed sober. I mean, you're 16 years sober now, which is incredible.
Mm,
But you kept that journey very private for a very long
mm.
time. Can you kind of touch on your reasoning behind that? Well, first, why you kept it private, and then why you decided to make it public.
Couple of reasons. One, I was told by someone in my life that it was embarrassing and shameful and I should never talk about it because people would judge me or think differently about me. And at my core, at my ethos, I just want love and acceptance. Like I think a lot of humans want to find love and acceptance, and that's what I wanted. And so for someone that was really important in my life to tell me that people would think differently of me was really hard because I didn't want that. And so for a long time, I kept that really quiet. There's also a part of me, there's nobody talking there at the time. There weren't a lot of women either talking about it. And my opinion, a lot of women, from what I've heard in my own experience, carry a lot of shame when it comes to addiction because people think it's a decision. They don't think it's a disease. They think that we pick it up and we do it and we're willingly doing it. It's not, right? I mean, there's like a chemical balance. I mean, there's all, all the sciences behind it. It is not a choice. And so that shame, I still carried that shame, that people would look at me and say like, oh my gosh, you chose to do this to yourself. Why would you put yourself in those situations? Like when I was drinking and when I was in a blackout, I did things I wasn't proud of. I did things I would never do as a sober person. But also what I realized was with the numbers that were increasing after COVID among female women drinking, around moms that are drinking and the mom wine culture and all of these things that are so pervasive and present, like I didn't have the luxury to stay silent anymore when people are literally dying. And so,
Mm.
the person in my life that had initially said it's shameful, um, we're no longer, we're parted ways. And so, um, that voice wasn't in my ear anymore. And this was, post COVID when drinking was increased, like drinking, the numbers had gone up. And then I saw the stats that 2.5 men to every one woman seeks treatment for addiction, and substance use disorder. But there was a 300% increase during the pandemic of women who turned to heavy drinking who had small kids at home. So one,
Wow.
what is it? Women. So women are suffering in silence. Two, what is it doing to our children and the next generation? If I'm still feeling shame, like put myself in the shoes of a woman that has 1 year and she's trying to do it on her own, or she's trying to do it with, a single mom with kids at home, or she's still trying to hold it all together and carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. And if I could say, look, I know what you're going through and you're not alone. Um, this is how I felt. And this is, I literally wanted to change the life or hope to, give hope to one person so they wouldn't feel alone. And so I shared my story for the first time a year ago on a friend's podcast. And people had no, because I used my married name, people had no idea I went through a divorce. And so I changed back to my maiden name and I shared that I was so, I mean, not in that order, but then people were like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were a swimmer. One, oh my gosh, I had no idea, that you were struggling with addiction. And oh my gosh, and you're sober. I just figured that you were healthy and didn't drink. And so all of a sudden,
Oh,
but not a single person that I know of. I mean, maybe people are talking, but there was more support than anything else. And how sad is this? Going back to social, I was like, oh my gosh, what if I lose 100 followers on Instagram because I share about my addiction? Literally. And that's so vapid and such a, I mean, it's real, right? I mean, being vulnerable,
yeah.
like that's what I thought. And then what if I can save the life of one person? And that was literally my decision point in sharing. Um, and since then, it's changed the life of women. I've had women message me saying, I saw your story. I got sober because of you. I identified, I'm a wine drinker. I hear these stories about, people shooting heroin or people, overdosing on fentanyl or people drinking, because the media portrays alcoholics and addicts as brown paper bags, liquor in a brown paper bag, homeless. Like there's not a lot of people who went to a 4-year college and were really good athletes and come from a good family and seem normal. I mean, I don't know, like I seem normal, all of those things. And so if I could show people that it's not scary to ask for help, and if I could show people that it's not the end of existence, because that's what I thought too. Once I stop drinking, I'm going to be no fun. What am I going to do? There's nothing out there. I mean, because I drank to clean, I drank at happy hour, I drank Bloody Marys, I drank, like it was my life. And so if I give all this up, what happens? And what I realized was if I put down the rocks, I can start carrying flowers. And that was a huge turning point.
So you're living life on life's terms. What are a couple, we can even get really micro here, habits, daily practices that you implement to live life on life's terms?
So for me, being present is really important. I can really live in my head. And so on a daily basis, I try to drop into my heart, right? So if I can do things that help me, that's really huge. And to be clear, I'm not perfect all the time, right? So like on a really good day, which is 90% of the time, I wake up, I get up before my son, I have a cup of coffee in the morning, I meditate for 20 minutes. I work out. Right now I'm loving Tracy Anderson. Do you know the Tracy Anderson method? It's like,
No.
I'm a swimmer, you're a swimmer. I'm
Yeah.
not coordinated and I look, I'm sure, very ridiculous, but I love it. It's dancing and it's like movements that I don't do. It's not functional, but it feels really good on my body and I love
Yeah.
it. And so I love the class and I love Tracy Anderson and I love, because also as a swimmer, as an athlete, I thought that working out had to look a certain way. I thought it had to be running. I had to take a spin class. I had to go swim. I had to lift weights. But what I found that I'm not going to do those things if I don't enjoy them. And so I found these different modalities that feel really good. I love Pilates, I love yoga. So some form of movement is huge. Cold shower. Love it.
Love a
2
cold
minutes.
shower. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the best. It's the best.
It's the best. There's all this evidence, it's that forced coldness is, I'm not saying this right, but like, that it's so good for you. Inflammation, it's good for toning the vagal nerve. It's good, like all this stuff, vagus nerve. So I do that. I meditate again in the afternoon and I try to get into bed before 10. So I get up around 5:30, go to bed at 10. So sleep is really huge. I do things like, trace minerals in my water, I drink spring water, like all of those little micro things. Try to eat really clean and healthy, but I also love ice cream. And so I'm not going to, deprive myself of the things that I love, especially of a 6-year-old. And we can walk to Jenny's. So we can like walk, down the hill and get a Jenny's ice cream. And so, but I think the most important thing is just being present because, living in the past or living in the future or, I mean, this is debatable, right? It's not even reality. Like only the present moment is reality. Like the past is what we think about it and the future is what we think it will be like, where the present moment's the only thing we currently have. And so that's the one thing I try to do on a daily basis. And the things like movement and meditation and do breath work, not every day, but that's something that's been really important in my life. Doing those things help keep me in that present moment.
Do you have a particular meditation practice that you would recommend, or a meditation or guided meditation that you would recommend?
So I did Ziva meditation, which is a Vedic meditation with Emily Fletcher. And I love it because I used to do a lot of guided mindfulness or meditations, but I'd need my phone or I needed to have like certain things and what I found, what she taught was that I don't need anything. I meditate on planes. Like if I'm early to pick up my son from school, I can sit in my car and meditate. And it's really helpful. So it's mindfulness, meditation, and manifestation. So she packages it up really nicely. I used to do a lot of, I love David G on Insight Timer. So every once in a while I'll do something like that. But for me too, I found that there's a difference in mindfulness and meditation. Like mindfulness is being present, where meditation is clearing out the trauma that's been stored and stuffed down. So I like both of those, but the meditation part is the one that I found has helped me like clear out and ground more than anything else.
Love it. I'll have to check it out. Those are such good recommendations. My last question for you is, The average age of my podcast listeners, like 22 to 24. If you could go back and talk to your early to mid 20 something self, what would you tell her?
You're good enough the way you are. You have everything inside of you. Trust your voice and trust the process. I was always trying to be something else or chasing something instead of just finding stillness and acceptance. And if I could go back and it all works out, it's okay. Ask for help. I know that's a lot. There's a lot. You're not alone. Find your tribe, and having a handful of friends who would do anything in the world for you and vice versa is so much more important than having a network of people who will just come in and out of your life without purpose or meaning. Those are my
Oh, you're gonna make
those
me
are a
cry.
couple.
All really, really good stuff. Thank you. So you have a couple cool things on the horizon. Can you go ahead and tell us about kind of what's coming up for you and maybe where the listeners can find you?
So I live in Arlington, Virginia, and so a friend and I we're going to launch women's circles in the DMV, which includes things. It's a 12-week like circle once a week, maybe once a month. We haven't totally ironed it out, but the idea is building it around like decreasing shame, having self-acceptance, self-love. And so around those circles, we're going to do things like community, yoga, breath work, cacao ceremonies, and just allow like a hold a space for women to come to just support and love each other, because sometimes, I mean, not all of my friends would go to a women's circle, but when I go to a women's circle, I know all of those women are there for the same purpose, to heal and to evolve and to love. And so being able to hold space for those women to do so and create that community is really important. So that's coming up in September. And then in August, I'm launching a holistic coaching practice and program. Initially, so at the beginning, it'll be one-on-one coaching with women, whether it's, finding your purpose, finding your voice, going through a divorce, navigating addiction. What does life look like? Which probably it's not relevant to your listeners, like after your kids leave the house, but it's for all stages of life, because I think as women, we go through these seasons, and we do hold space for a lot of people, whether it's our family or our boyfriend or our partner or our child or something. Like women are just natural nurture. In my opinion, women are just natural nurturers and space holders. And I think if we can create that space for women to, to find their purpose too, and like love themselves and fill up their container, it's really important. So in the one-on-one coaching container, it's just more direct, like high touch healing. And then eventually I'll start probably towards the end of this year, like a group mastermind. So where we can on digital online come together as a community, same thing, have those conversations, get curious, support each other, things like that. And then next year, I forgot to mention this, in 2024, I'm launching international retreats. So I'm looking at space in Costa Rica to hold space for like a yoga. It's a 5-day, we're calling it like a 5-day emotional detox. And so doing everything from breath work to yoga, acupuncture, functional medicine, self-development, all of that. So that's coming soon. And everything is on my website is hilaryphelps.com with one L. Instagram, I kind of took a little hiatus from sharing on Instagram, but and that's Hilary Phelps _.
Well, thank you, Hilary, so much for joining me today, for sharing your story. You have inspired so many and you will continue to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was such a good conversation.